Hi, my name is Laurie McLean, and I'm a registered dietitian working with 4 Arrows. I have been invited to help out with some of the educational piece regarding nutrition, and it's for a 90-day challenge, weight challenge that the 4 Arrows has on in their communities and in their staff here in Winnipeg. One of the things you'll notice is sometimes, I don't look as much at sodium, but I'm going to put it on here. Dietary fiber and carbohydrate. And it'll give it in grams. So if I was looking between 2 cereals, one cereal tells me it's 22 grams. This is cereal A and this is cereal B. And this tells me it's got 1, and this cereal was 21 and it's got 4 grams. Okay, this is how you can tell how much a sugar cereal might affect your bloods, okay, and cause that influx. What you would do is subtract. Dietary fiber does not make your blood sugars go up or down. It's a part of the fiber is actually a part of the plant your body can't use. It can't digest. It actually has a lot of healthy benefits in terms of protecting your colon, keeping you regular. You don't want constipation, okay? You want to have nice soft stools. You don't want to have it mushy, but you want it nice and soft. You don't want fiber that can cause damage to your intestinal lining inside. So if you are one that's suffering from things like constipation, things like this can also create a stress, and you might have to look at increasing the fiber in your diet if you're finding that you are having trouble this way. But when you're looking at a cereal, I'd be subtracting the dietary fiber from the grams carbohydrate. So it comes to 21. So cereal A means 21 of those carbohydrates. This one here, okay, let's say this was 22 as well. Okay, same amount of carbs, but this one had 4 grams of fiber. This would be 18. This tells me how much of it's going to affect our blood sugars. So this would be the better choice. It'd be a lower amount affecting our blood sugar. Now, 4 grams of carbs, if you ever read a label, equals 1 teaspoon of sugar. So if I divide 21 divided by 4, it's about 5.1. If I divide 18, that means there's 5.1 teaspoons of sugar in that cereal. 18 minus divided by 4 is about 4.5 teaspoons. So this one here has a little bit less sugar. So if I'm going to be choosing a cereal, I always like to look at dietary fiber. And what you want to try to do is get a cereal if possible. And if your store doesn't have it, ask them to bring them in. There's ones like Fiber One. There's All Bran with psyllium, oatmeal. There's a whole bunch of cereals that are out there. Look for the ones with more than 4 grams fiber. So that's one of the first things I would be looking at. Another thing, if I was looking at some of these dinners, these instant packaged meals, like sometimes I've been to communities and there is no other option. There's no fresh meats left. There's more, and it happens. You know, what happens is the orders come in and all the community go and they shop the same day. And if you're not lucky enough to get there on time, sometimes all you have is some of these packaged meals, these packaged dinners and stuff. And what you want to look at for those ones, I'm going to put this one up here, is you want to look on the label for those kind of things. I'd be looking at the fat content and the sodium, especially if I was struggling with high blood pressure. So I'm going to have the camera focus on this one in particular. One of the things, if you're ever reading a label, is to look at something called percent DV, or percent daily value. And what they've done is they based it on a 2,000 calorie diet, and it lets us know how much, what percentage, okay? The first thing you want to look at when you're looking at reading a label is, or you're comparing a label between two foods, you're wondering if this is the right cereal or this is the best TV dinner, the first thing you want to look at, okay, is the serving size at the top, okay? You want to make sure you're comparing equal serving sizes or roughly around the same amount, okay? So if you're looking at 2 loaves of bread, sometimes the companies will try to fool you. One loaf might be comparing 2 slices, another one might be only comparing 1 slice. So make sure you're comparing the equal numbers or amounts of a food. So look at the amount of food and make sure that you have a rough idea of how much is a serving. And that's always at the top of our little square nutrition facts label. Now, if I was to look at a TV dinner, okay, or if I'm going to look at something that fast food and I want to know which is the best one, there's 2 of them here, I would look at your fat, okay, grams, your fat, and another section. If you go down about 3 down, there's calories. I wouldn't look at that right at that point. I would go down to the one that says fat, and the one, and if you pick out, if you've got a handy label anywhere handy, you can even look at it. Their labels are all the same. But I would look at the fat and then the saturated and trans fat. Now, what is beautiful about percent DV is that it's very easy to compare foods. Okay, you don't have to count calories, you don't have to sit and memorize grams of fat. All you have to do is look over on the far right column of your nutrition label and it'll say percent DV and it'll say 4%, 8%. Now, here's an example of one over here, okay? So if one of the cereals says 2% fat, okay, and 1% saturated and trans fat. Those are the bad things, the things that you don't want very high. When you look at percent DV, you want to make sure it stays under 5%. Okay? The maximum you want it to be is 15%. So when I look at a Hungry Man's Dinner, a Swanson Hungry Man's Dinner, I will look at the percent DV of fat and trans and saturated. And when I look at them, some of them are 65% fat. That means 2/3 of that meal is just grease. What you're paying for is a bunch of lard, a bunch of bad fat, saturated fat, that is the kind that blocks the arteries, that will stick to the inside of your arteries and cause the heart problems. I want to look for the one with the lowest amount of fat and percent DV for fat and trans fat and saturated fat. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to be looking at all the grams and everything else. Just look over in that right-hand column and look at the 15. And look for the ones, any of the products that might be left on the shelf that are under 15% are your better choice. If it's like 18% and that's the best choice, then that's your best choice. If the next one's 35%, you're better to go with the meal that said 18% DV. It's a lot less fat than 35%. And that's one of the things you want to look at. The other one is the same thing with sodium. That's another thing I would look at because sodium is another thing that can create that high blood pressure, but again, the percent DV. So if I'm looking at any meals, any frozen dinners, any kind of things like this, I would always be looking at fat, saturated trans fat, and then sodium. And sodium is where we find in salt, okay? Salt is also known as sodium chloride. And always try to keep it under 15. If it's under 5, that's perfect. But if it's under 15, that you don't want to try to go any higher than 15. And there's a lot of other meals out there, a lot of TV dinners, there's a lot of other dinners, there's a lot of other box things that you might pick up at the store. And I've been in the communities and I've seen many of them that are within the range that you can purchase. But it's a matter of starting to take a look at the ones in the store and finding out which ones they are. And the first little while, it takes a little bit of time looking at your labels. And then once you get into the hang of it and you kind of know which ones, because often the store brings in the same stuff, then you'll kind of know which ones you can get each time. If you're finding that there isn't a product that's very good, you might want to talk to the store manager and ask if they could bring in something a little healthier, something with a little less fat, a little bit less sodium. Can they bring in these products for you? And sometimes they can do that. If it's on their list or whatever, they might be able to make arrangements to bring that in for you. If I was looking at any dairy, in terms of the dairy products and stuff like this, anything like milk and stuff like this, whether it's skim milk, 2% milk, chocolate milk, banana milk, I don't get too picky because I would rather see people drinking milk over pop. And if you can get the kids having chocolate milk, and I'm not talking the kind with the Nesquik added, like even chocolate milk diluted with a bit more white milk to stretch it further, anything, that's way better than having the kids drinking pop or a lot of these juices, a lot of these crystal stuff that doesn't give them anything, and it doesn't give you anything. One thing about the milk group, it's one of the groups that a lot of people don't eat a lot of, and that's because of lactose intolerance. They have trouble handling the milk that is in, the sugar that's in milk. And as a result, they get really grumbly guts. They get the bloating, the cramps, they get a bit of diarrhea, and that's because you're missing something in your intestines that helps to turn that sugar and milk into glucose. You're having trouble turning it into it. To turn all of these foods into glucose, they need something called enzymes. And you're missing that enzyme. And that enzyme is called lactase. ASE, lactase. And for some reason, they could handle milk when they were kids, and as they get older, their body changed, and they can't. They can't handle the milk now. This is where you could talk to your doctor. You can get something called lactase enzyme tablets, or you can buy it at Safeway or whatever. They're not medications. It's not prescription. It's just the missing enzyme. It's that stuff you're missing. And if you had a glass of milk, you take it, and it'll break it down in your stomach for you into glucose, so you don't get the grumbly guts and you don't get the discomfort. The other thing you can do is there's those lactose-free milk that you can get called Lactaid, and that's another solution that you could use. But why we really want milk in the diet, and this is something that a lot of people, when they're going on these weight challenges and you read these magazines, they tell eliminate dairy products. Not a good thing. Because in order for the muscles, right now, in order for my muscles to work, in order for my heart to beat, I need calcium. Calcium is a mineral. It's an electrolyte. It's a mineral that's needed in my blood to keep my heart running, to keep the integrity or the strength of my blood vessels nice and strong, and keep my blood vessels elastic and strong, so it takes the pumping of the blood. It's very, very important. And what's happened is that we find that 85% of those who end up with high blood pressure are usually non-milk drinkers. 85% are non-milk drinkers that do not drink milk that end up with high blood pressure. They have definitely found a link between those who are not getting enough calcium, when milk is our best source right now. The other way of getting your calcium, if you just don't like milk, is to try to get back to some of the traditional cooking methods. And that means when you have that boiled, like moose soup or something like this, boil the soup bone, boil the moose bone or boil the chicken bones for 3 or 4 hours. So the boiling will start to leach or pull the calcium out of the bones, and then make your soup out of the broth. The traditional way of making the fish soup, where you boil the fish until the bones were soft and you ground the bones into the soup, awesome, because that bowl of soup is like having a glass of milk. That is how traditionally a lot of the calcium came in the diet. The small bulrush at the bottom of the little bulrush, there's a cattail. For some areas, you get these little cattails, little plants that have the little brown things that look like this. And in the spring, you get these cattails in the marshes. But if you pull them out in the spring before they have the cattails, you're pulling them out when they're young sprouts. There's a piece at the bottom about this big that tastes like asparagus, and it's loaded with calcium. And so the traditional diet had a lot of calcium. There's a lot of the soups. But right now, we're making soups out of Mr. Noodle. We're just ripping open a package of garbage. And it's very high in sodium, very high in fat. It makes blood sugars go out of control. Portion is out of whack. And it doesn't do anything healthy for us. If you can eat as much in terms of if you're able to access or get traditional foods like fish in your diet, wild meats, I highly recommend if you can get that into your diet. It's much better than a lot of this processed stuff, a lot of the garbage that is out there. And try to look at changing your diet to be as traditional as possible. And when you can't get the traditional meats, then try to make choices from the store of foods that are as close to nature, as close to the traditional diet, like just a fresh pork chop or a plain steak or a plain hamburger, rather than all the stuff mixed into meatballs for you. This way you can make it the way you want it, and you have control over that. So making those choices and choosing and comparing products in the market, products that you have in the store to figure out which one is going to be the healthiest for you, is really important to look at the label, and that can help you do it. And the best way is that percent DV, that percent daily value. It's so easy. Years ago, we had to sit down and calculate calories, and what Canada is on the and trying to ensure is to make sure that products are about equal amount, okay, in weight. So if it's a cereal, you're comparing 30 grams of cereal with 30 grams. So what they're trying to do now is to make sure there's standardization in portion sizes when they put on labels. So they can't be fooling us or deceiving us, and we think that we're getting something, and then we get home and realize, oh man, it's not that healthy. So what I like is that this is a one very simple way. Start reading labels, start learning the lessons of how to read them. If you need to go online, you can go Health Canada, percent DV, daily value, and put PDF. So it's a PDF, percent daily value, and you can put Health Canada if you want, and it'll come up with a chart that you can actually download. And I thought I had a chart here. I don't have a copy here, but you can download this chart, and it'll have, you can print it out for yourself, and it looks similar to this, very similar to this, and it shows you how to use percent DV to read labels. But it's a very handy, very fast, very easy way of picking the best choices that you have among your options. And is there any questions anybody else has about percent DV or any other? Okay, well, I'd like to thank all of you from all the communities for taking the time to listen today and be part of the program. And yeah, and if you have any other questions, you can also send them or email them to Vivian, and she'll just forward them on to me. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have regarding any of the information we've covered, or if you have other questions that you have. Thank you very much.